As they say in hockey, let's do that hockey.
Play a full 60 minutes.
Yeah, I'm just trying to keep it simple.
Get pucks deep, bring the puck deep, put pucks in deep.
We got to keep it simple and just get pucks going forward.
Getting into the forecheck.
We got to keep playing aggressive.
Trying to take away their time and space.
We're focused on tonight. We just got to stick to our game.
Another broadcaster from the top line of NHL, joining the fifth liners here, and the voice of a lot of celebration throughout my college career, Mike Maniscalco, the play-by-play voice of the Carolina Hurricanes. Mike, welcome aboard. Thank you for joining us here.
Let me tell you, we actually had to do a ranking. I don't even know if I would be associated with a line. I would be like, well, he could be a seventh liner if we expanded the rosters out to 40 players. So just happy to be here, happy to help the team, and hope to provide as much offense as I can here today, boys.
I think that puts us down in the SPHL or the Fed League going, so I guess be careful where we trot from there. But a very exciting offseason for your area here, Mike, and the Carolina Hurricanes specifically, where you make it to the conference final last year, a year that was maybe expected to be somewhat of a rebuild, and not in the fact of missing playoffs and being in the bottom of the barrel, but with the big names that left the team 2 off seasons ago, coming off a dominant regular season and years of dominance. Maybe the expectation was that you'd be kind of third in the conference and push towards the playoffs, but not go as deep as they did. And when you look back on that conference final run, what was able to make Carolina so successful in the fact that they survived the Rantanen mishap? They reached the conference final and not only survive what could have been a rebuild, but thrive through it.
Well, the one thing about this organization, Casey, is it's never been about one guy. It isn't. It's always the sum, and it's not the parts. So when you say they survived the Rantanen thing, he was in where the organization really should be applauded. And I know that it didn't work out. It wasn't the happy ending for those parties, but they took the big swing, right? And that's what you want for a team that, how are you going to get over that hump? How are you going to beat the Florida Panthers? How are you going to get into the Stanley Cup final? Well, Mikko Rantanen was available. This team took the swing, and it turned out the way that it did, where, Rantanen pretty much basically put the cards out. At least he did it and let the organization know how he was going to play. So then they could pivot and bring in a player like Logan Stankoven and add 2 first-round picks. And when, it's so weird when you break down everything, everybody is so quick to, you guys hear it all the time. Grade the trade. Well, you can't grade them until, and that trade for me never was going to be graded until Rantanen signed an extension. And then you could say, okay, this is how it works out. Well, to turn around and add players and add picks on what could have really been a tough situation for the organization, I think they made a ton of lemonade out of it. And that's a good thing, a really good thing. The thing that stands out to me about the run, though, is you add a player like Logan Stankoven and watch him in the playoffs. And, he is not a gamer. He's just one hell of a player for his size. He never loses board battles. He goes to the front of the net. He's willing to pay the price. So you added that into the mix. The goaltending was really good in the playoffs, especially the first 2 rounds with Frederik Andersen. I know that is, and at some point, I'm sure one of you guys is going to ask me about the goaltending this year for the Carolina Hurricanes, which is the same story. We're putting it on repeat. But they have that. The penalty kill travels everywhere. And for me, when you get into the playoffs, if you either have to have the best power play or the penalty kill, that is number 1 in the postseason. And the Canes penalty kill does travel pretty much everywhere. But I laughed at all of those things at the start of last season when people are like, oh, man, I think the Hurricanes are going to – and I understood. You lose big-time players like Brett Pesce and Brady Shea, who have been a part of the DNA of the team for the majority of the turnaround and the success that they've had. And 2 key cogs on the defense like that. But you add in a Sean Walker, who I really like. I think he's an underappreciated player. You guys have dealt with that where there's a player that you've seen or that's been waiting in the wings and then they get their opportunity. You're like, yeah, it stinks that this guy graduated or this guy gets called up, but this guy's ready to go. And that was Sean Walker fitting in with the Carolina Hurricanes. Shane Gostisbehere was ready to go with the team and have that opportunity. So really you plugged in 2 pieces that aren't Pesce and Shea. But Jalen Chatfield was ready for a little bit more. And Dmitry Orlov was going to get an elevated role. So when people at the start of the year are even, flirting with, I don't know if this is a playoff team. I'm like, what the hell do you guys watch? Like, you look around the conference, like, if you want to say they're not going to win the division, okay, I'm fine with that. But to say that they might miss the playoffs, to me, was asinine. And the other good thing for this group, is I give a super long-winded answer to it, is they don't care about that stuff. They really don't. It is, you hear it all the time. Oh, we don't listen. We don't pay. They really don't pay attention to it. They just care about their group, what's in their locker room, and where they go from there. And they knew what they had.
And I think that's the perfect description when you say kind of making lemonade out of it, because it could have fallen flat if they don't take that risk to trade him to Dallas and let him do exactly what Gensel did and walk in free agency and get nothing for it. Instead, they turn it into Keandre Miller, essentially, with the draft capital that they get. And there's two ways to look at this that I want to kind of poke at you with. Morrow being a guy out of the NCAA, he's been talked about for, it feels like, a decade with his development and being kind of a top prospect in the Canes organization. And we saw him in and out of the lineup for the postseason, kind of his first chance at getting a crack with some injuries. Now they ship him away, but they bring in Keandre Miller, who's a known and developed talent here. What do you see the impact of Keandre Miller being, and with the loss of Morrow and having to send a couple of those draft picks, how tough is that to see that side of it go to bring him in when it could end up being a great thing with him being an explosive player and kind of exactly what this team needs with a lot of deep prospects?
Whenever you give up an unknown quantity, and that's what Scott Morrow still is at the NHL level, you better be bringing in something that you're pretty sure is plug and play with the group that you have. Keandre Miller is more than plug and play with his Carolina Hurricanes group. He is, however you want to put the top pair together, if he does end up playing next to Jacob Slavin or whoever he ends up playing next to, if it is, Sean Walker I was just talking about, or Jalen Chatfield, he is really ready to, I think, take a big step. Sometimes when you play for certain teams in an organization, and I'm not taking a shot at the Rangers here, but, they had a season where everything that could go wrong pretty much did for them. So then you start pointing at this guy, this guy, this guy. And then, what do we do? Do we extend Keandre Miller? Do we give him the money? And considering the season we just had. So sometimes guys need a fresh start. And I think that this will be Brady Shea 2.0. I keep saying that, where he comes from the Rangers. He's going to get an opportunity to play big minutes with the Carolina Hurricanes. And you know what he's not going to have to be? The guy. He's not going to be, and this sounds like I'm taking a shot at Adam Fox when I say this, he's not the guy now responsible for covering for Adam Fox, who doesn't have any interest in playing in his own zone when, Adam Fox wants to get points. And he's a former Norris Trophy winner. We know he's a fabulous player, but sometimes you try to put fits together that don't fit. I look at all of the combinations where you can play Keandre Miller in the minutes you can give him in the style that the Canes play. And I go back to the playoff series 2 years ago when the Rangers knocked out the Hurricanes. For my money, Keandre Miller was the best player on the ice for either team. And he hits, he has size, and now I think that he just gets out of that spotlight and can just play. So I think that he'll flourish. So, there's an old saying, guys, and I'm an old man now, so I've heard them all, but you got to give to get. And I wish nothing but the best for Scott Morrow. I hope he turns into the offensive player that he was at UMass Amherst. Anytime that you're breaking Cale Makar's records, I don't care if it's freshman, I don't care if it's, 8th grade records, you're doing something right. So that Morrow has that game to him. But when you get a chance to get a young player coming into his prime that you've already seen can play big NHL minutes, I think that was worth the capital that they gave up for Keandre Miller.
And just on the topic of another elite defenseman, you were talking too about like underappreciated players earlier in this. And I think a player who, he's definitely not underappreciated in Raleigh, but I think you could argue he was underappreciated around the league until this year when he was talked about a lot. Is like Slavin, I feel like after the Four Nations, everyone was talking about him a ton. And I just remember after that Capitals series, and Coach Carberry shouted him out and just said, like, this guy is very underrated, what he does. And I did want to ask you about him because you're seeing him play on a day-to-day basis, and you could articulate it as well as any. But what really stands out about him and makes him such a dominant player in this league?
I think he is one of those guys who, whatever he wanted to play, he was going to be great at. Like, he's just a great all-around athlete. We all grew up with these guys where, if they wanted to play football, he would have been the quarterback or the best wide receiver. He would have been the best baseball player. He would have been the standout pitcher or the best hitter. His hand-eye coordination, guys, off the charts. And I say that because in the Four Nations, he got to display it. We see it all the time. So I don't take it for granted. I get to see it all the time. And people are like, where did this come from? I'm like, have you ever watched a Hurricanes game? This is every night. Every night you get this out of Jacob Slavin. Like, the weird nights are the ones where it is an off night, which I think is 1 out of 82. And even then, I think I'm going on the over on the 1. He will make a play, guys, and you can appreciate this. It's going to look like a real simple play, and I'll do my best to set it up for everybody who's listening, watching here on the podcast. It's going to be a simple dump in along the wall, off the ice about a foot or two, maybe not necessarily a hard rim, but try to flip it in. He will knock it down, and in one motion, knock it down, lay it flat, and then hand off a transition pass the other way that gets the puck going the other. And it happens so nonchalant that you're like, I don't really know what happens. And I'm at the point, I'm like, well, Slavin knocks it down and, try to chip it in, knock down by Slavin and go on the other. It just, you can't really do it justice, but every night he makes that play. He doesn't panic with the puck. He takes hits. He can be more physical than I think what he's given credit for. But he is, and I know that I'm going to sound like I'm on the payroll, and I am, but he is for me, prototype current NHL defenseman, meaning he takes away time and space. He knows how to gap up. He can pat. He does not waste time in his own end trying to look for an outlet, because if it's there, he goes through the middle, but he knows that he can go off the boards if that's the right play to get it out. I think he's patented that gap wedge that he can hit. How he must have a hole-in-one every single summer when he goes and plays golf. Another thing that he's great at that I'm sure that if he wanted to, he'd be on the PGA Tour. But you'll watch him flip this puck, this aerial flip out of his own zone, and it goes about, I'm going to put it in the ballpark about 100 feet in the air. So, you do like a good 35, 40-yard shot, gets it right there, and away it goes. And it's just every night you see it. And one other thing, he made a play against Connor McDavid this past year. And McDavid has the puck at his own blue line, and he, takes off. This is Connor McDavid. So I'm sitting there going, oh boy, we're going to see something. And he crosses the Canes blue line, and it's basically him and Slavin one-on-one. And McDavid goes to make a move where he's got it on the forehand and he's going to drag it across, and Slavin just pokes it away and knocks it up the ice. And I went back to watch it, and McDavid almost has this look like, what just happened? That doesn't happen to me. How did this guy do that? And that's the thing. So the hand-eye coordination, and plus he just has this unbelievable temperament where it's the next play and the next play. He never gets caught thinking about something that happened in the first period, or if he makes if he puts the puck in a spot where it's not supposed to go, which again is rare, he's just on to the next play. And he is, if I had to build the perfect modern NHL defenseman, he's the guy who I point to.
Well, you and I, before we started recording, were joking about golf talent, and it sounds like Slavin might be in the running for 2028, but 2026 in the Olympics is one that he's got his name all over. It's going to shake up the schedule quite a bit. And when you look at the Canes roster, already named Aho and Anderson, who will be there, the Slavin's probably a shoo-in to get there as well. But maybe some more names further. There will be other teams that have a long list of guys that have to play on top of the compact schedule. How much of a challenge is that when you think about staying healthy? Guys like Freddie Anderson, who you need to be healthy for that tandem to work with Kochetkov, and then you have to worry about the extra games going overseas and the risk of your assets there. But trying to what differences are we going to see in trying to moderate the health and the longevity as you look with a team like the Canes, a team like the Panthers, who's going to have a bunch, Edmonton Oilers with McDavid and Draisaitl, who are going to be over there, who need those stars to be in the lineup and be at their best to have success, but they're also going to have to keep them healthy all the way through run through late June with this long schedule.
Yeah, that's, I think, the question that is on the top of every head coach and every general manager's mind. The simple way that I would go about it is you can't worry about it. You just can't. You've got to play your guys the way that you'd play them, and not think about, we're going to have to save them because they're going to play all of these games in the Olympics. And because you're trying to forecast the unknown. And for the European players, and this is not a knock. This is I think it's a great thing. The gold medal means more to them. It really does. Now, if it's U.S. and Canada, and now the stakes are really raised. But for the Finns and the Swedes and the Czechs, it really is a matter of pride, and they want to win that tournament so bad. The Russians, they want to play. We know that they're not allowed in, and you just got to think how much of that is killing guys like Alexander Ovechkin and Andrei Svechnikov, guys who would love to get that chance to play on that stage. But I don't think you can worry about it. And I do think that there is enough of a pause or a break where I'm not worried about the guys who are playing. I'm worried about how do you get the guys who aren't playing during that tournament to get right back into, because that's when the schedule gets really compressed. And you got to go from, you've been playing, I think it works out to, I think I counted it. I think the Canes have like 58 games before the All-Star break that'll be played, and then, or before the Olympic break. And then here we go. And now it gets really compressed. So what do you do about those guys where you're not playing for 3.5 weeks? So that's where I think everybody gets always focused on the guys playing. I start to worry about the guys when you come back. Do you get back up to speed, or are you ready to go? Because remember, at the Four Nations, all the guys who played in it, and at the level of especially USA Canada, they said when they came back to the NHL, the speed of the first few games was a joke. We went from going from IndyCar racing to go-kart racing. It's a little different. But I think the other thing that I take out of it, where I don't go to any of the negatives for the Olympic break, guys, how fired up were all of us over the Four Nations in the first Canada-U.S. game? Don't you dare tell me you weren't texting or calling your friends when the Kachucks were taking on Canada, going, "Are you guys watching this?" Like it breeds that really big interest in hockey. And so I'm all for it, because whenever you can do best on best, we're the winners at the end of it, and you go from there. Yeah, you got to be concerned. It's a lot of games played, and it's a lot of opportunity. But I also don't think that the Olympics are, while they can get physical and nasty, it's not an NHL playoff physical and nasty. It's more of a, I'll show you, I'll make this play. Although now I have to rule in the Kachucks for this one, so maybe it will be physical and nasty, depending on if Matthew gets on the ice in time to do this. But I think it's a good thing. I really do. I don't look at it as a detriment. I'm going to try to really this year push it as a positive, instead of, people saying, well, yeah, you know what? And tomorrow you could walk outside and slip on the driveway and, break your hip. And considering I am now on the other side of 50 years old, that's a real concern for me, fellas.
Yeah.
Not playing in Italy.
We did want to ask you, we have such a big audience. Well, for the big part of this audience for our broadcast is like aspiring broadcasters, people who are, really want to do what you do, want to do play-by-play. And we do like to ask just kind of about your story and how you got into hockey and then into play-by-play. And I, from doing a little bit of research, that it's something that you've always wanted to do. So just wanted to kind of ask about the background on how you got into it and how you made your way down to Raleigh.
All right. First off, to all of you aspiring broadcasters out there, just quit, go find another job. Long hours, you're away from home, you're going to miss holidays. Some of the pay is not great. I'm doing this for job protection by telling you don't do this.
I love that, Mike, because that will scare away people that are competing for our jobs too.
Boys, I'm telling you, self-preservation becomes a big thing, Owen and Casey. No, it's for me when I realized that it was going to be a severe lack of talent that was going to keep me from being a professional athlete. What was the next best thing? And I wanted to get into covering it. And the funny thing is, going back to the Stone Ages when I started, like that's when ESPN, there was not 24-hour sports talk radio stations. ESPN Sports Center was like, that was the goal. Like you wanted to get on there. My dream was to be the play-by-play voice for the New York Yankees on the radio side of things. Like that was when it was all said and done, how do I get to that field? Or I wanted to be a columnist and then get on, the sports reporters or the panel shows that they have. But my path was not linear. And the one thing that I tell every aspiring broadcaster is if you think that it's this A to B journey, for some it is, but for most of us, it's not. So don't close doors on opportunity, meaning if you want to stay in sports, but there's an opportunity to get on TV somewhere, if you want a TV play-by-play job or a reporting job, but it's news, not necessarily sports, well, don't shut that off just because it's not sports. Like, you have to keep your options open. And that's how you get a lot of experience. You get in front of people. Anytime you can have a reel that you can throw in front of bosses, because, you know, you might stick at a job and it never opens up for you. So then what are you doing? You're going to think back to, you had this opportunity and you turned it down. So my route was not, you know, circuitous, but it was not straight. You know, I went from sports talk in Buffalo to sports talk in Richmond, but I always kept, anytime there was a play-by-play gig open. I didn't care if it was high school football or, you know, Division III college baseball, or if it was, you know, the corgi races. It's keeping yourself sharp. And that's the other thing. I think, like, so many people feel, I just have to be this disciplined. This is what I need to do. I can't do anything else. Well, no, to call basketball and to call baseball is completely different from calling hockey to calling football. So you keep yourself sharp. And again, it opens up doors for you. Also, be nice. I know that this sounds weird, but be nice. That stands out, because in this business, there are a lot of people who, for whatever reason, aren't. I don't get it, but that's fine. But always work hard, because somebody's always judging your work somewhere. You might not know it, but there's a boss, or there is somebody behind the scenes who is like, oh yeah, I worked with him, and hard worker. I worked with her. Hard worker, was great, was prepared, did the job, just a joy to work with, and oh, they were nice. So that really helps out. I know that's a very Fred Rogers take there, Owen, about, you know, hey neighbor, let's be nice, but it does make a difference. But my big thing is always, you don't have to take no for an answer, but at the same time, don't put yourself with so many blinders on that you limit your opportunity to go someplace else.
Our partner restaurant, a couple Saturdays from now, has a wiener dog race going on. So that might have just sparked me to go ask if they need a voice for it.
Hey, you're right down the road. You're right down the road, Casey. If you need me, I can come in. I can do, you know, something. Be the analyst. Why not? Here we go. That Schnauzer, you know where they came from.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask too, because yeah, you mentioned like corgi race, but like, I don't know. Yeah, I can relate to kind of just calling random. I'm a field hockey game tomorrow. I don't really know too much about it. So, was there like a specific sport or random event that was like, you remember that's like was so out of left field that you ended up doing?
It's more locations than events that I ended up doing. Although I one time had to introduce Adam Carolla, the stand-up comic, to a sold-out show in Durham. And I thought it was just, hey, here's Adam. Like, that's what it was. And we're all backstage and met him. And there are people go, all right, you got 5 minutes. And I'm like, I'm not a stand-up comedian. What do you mean I got 5 minutes? And they're like, oh yeah, you got 5 minutes to fill until you bring out Adam. And I'm like, okay. So that one was a little unnerving. Somehow I got through it. Self-deprecating humor was a really good thing on that one. So that got me through. I have done broadcasts in various and sundry locations. There was a golf broadcast that I was at in the radio days where, you know, I joke, it's a thunderstorm. It's about 48 degrees and I'm holding two wires together as I'm broadcasting to stay on the air. Those were always fun days. I had to do a talk show from an adult bookstore once. Kind of hard to keep your concentration going on that one, but that's a true story. Yeah, it's exactly what you think, guys. You don't alter your first draft when I say that. There used to be places where people would go to buy that stuff, not the internet, just so you know. So that one was a little bit odd, but I had to do a college football broadcast, not in the press box, across the way in the stands. and it was in Kane, New Jersey. It was the Kane Cougars, and me and the analyst were sitting amongst the parents of the Kane Cougars, and they were not a very good football team, and they were getting beat bad. And he and I were like, we're the guys sitting here in New Jersey. Now the Sopranos hadn't come out yet, but with my last name, we got to be nice. And halftime finally happens, and one of the parents turns around and like, we can hear your broadcast. And we're like, oh boy, they're going to throw us over the edge. Here we go. And they're like, our team's not that good. You don't have to be this nice about what's happening. So that's where I went, okay, all right. Honesty is the best policy. So those are a couple of standout broadcasts that I've had where it's either weird or, please just get me to the end of it so I can get home.
I mean, I think it's like, it makes sense with you mentioning like knowing your location and being so important. I mean, we were talking right before we hopped on here about just some of your travel stories and things like that. And I did want to make sure we asked for our listeners about that story in San Jose. We'll just let you take it away.
All right. So we're traveling out to San Jose, and it's early in the season, and I just got a flu shot. And we're going actually to California first. So it was one of the weird California road trips where it's LA first, then San Jose, then back to Anaheim. And I'm the ringside reporter and the pregame show host and the intermission host. So, there's nothing to it. So I get this shot on Friday. We leave for LA on Monday. And we're flying out there, and like halfway through the flight, I don't feel right. And I'm sitting there going, there's that old myth that if you get the flu shot, you get the flu. And I'm like, oh man, do I have like a stomach flu from this? And the worst thing you can say, and you guys know this when you're around a team, is especially to the trainers, I have the flu. They'd boot me out over Kansas and say, find your way home. So I get to LA and isn't feeling great. And, do the game that Tuesday night, and nothing's getting better. And my wife was actually watching the games, and she goes, "Is it hot in Staples Center?" It was Staples at the time. And I said, "No, it's freezing in here." She goes, "You're sweating, and I can see it on TV," because I told her I wasn't feeling good. And she goes, "Maybe you got to check." So I got checked out. Had a stage manager who was awesome. He made sure that. I went and saw an EMT, and they're doing all this stuff. And they're like, well, where you aren't feeling right, there's nothing there. They're like, there's no major organ. I don't know what's going on with you, but you should go to the emergency room. Like, no, I don't need that. We're playing San Jose tomorrow night. I got to fly up there. So get on the plane, gets worse, and then just gets kind of unbearable. And I checked myself into a hospital in San Jose, into an emergency room, which it's a comedy and a drama all at the same time. I get told when they finally get me in the back room and do all this stuff, they do a C scan real quick, a CAT scan, and they go, we found a mass in your abdomen, and it's rather sizable. We don't have the surgeon or the facilities to handle this. We got to move you. Are you okay with that? I'm like, what am I going to say? No. I'm like, yeah, okay. So I get moved to this other hospital in San Jose, and then long story short, it's a really big tumor called a desmoid tumor. They just grow and grow, and that's their danger. They don't ever stop. It's basically scar tissue, and your body doesn't know to shut off the switch to stop making it. And it liked to attach to things, and it attached to my favorite small intestine and ruptured it. So that was my problem. And I flew with that, which tells you what a genius I am. So to all of you broadcasters out there, if you do not feel good, you do not have to play hero. Go get checked out, or else you deliver the ugliest looking baby in the history of the world. I saw a picture of the thing. It's terrible, and we'll just leave it at that. But I was fortunate enough to make it to North Carolina. I use all of my good luck on my bad luck, guys. So that's one of the good things about me. I was able to come back, and it got treated, and it's the two best words you'll ever hear when you hear the word tumor. It's non-cancerous. But they do return, that's the thing. But I learned from that moment, if I got a sneeze that doesn't feel or sound right, I'm calling the doctor and making sure that I'm okay.
Well, with this being my first pro job, a lot of the packing I've done comes in big bus trips or in the back of my Prius with 12 suits packed, so I can choose that. you had to learn to pack and have probably become a pro on it. What advice do you have in the packing game of pro sports and learning how to travel and be well equipped?
I'm going to, Casey, I wish you would have sought me out earlier because you don't need that many suits. My first ever road trip, there were 6 games and I brought 6 suits because I'm like, I need a different suit every night with a different shirt and a different tie. No, you don't. And I'm on TV. I've learned that if it's like 6 games, you bring 2 suits, you bring 4 different shirts, and if you want to, you can bring 6 ties. That seems like I have learned how to travel so much where if it doesn't, if you're looking at your thing, you're like, do I really need that 4th T-shirt? Am I going to wear this someplace out? No, you're going to sleep in the same pair of shorts every night. Pretty much. And, you're going to work out, bring some workout clothes. You get that all taken care of. But I learned right away, bringing 6 suits, all you're doing is adding unnecessary weight to the plane. And then the trainers don't like you if you do that. So the equipment managers are really upset with you for it. So you're on that road trip because you're going to a different, miner's a little different. You guys play some weekend series, so I get it. But when you're traveling and you're like, I'm going to be in another city the next night, they're not going to know what suit you wore the night before. Nobody's going to be sitting there going, oh, he's wearing the dark gray suit again. You might get a couple of people be like, didn't you wear that tie 3 games ago? Yeah, it was 3 games ago. I like it. I'm bringing it back out. It's good luck. That's always the other thing, too, because you know that we're responsible for all of the things that happen as announcers, guys. So if there's a no-hitter, if the no-hitter gets broken up, if there's a shutout, it's all on us. We all will it to happen. So my fallback is when somebody calls it out, I'm like, oh, they won in this. I wore this tie and they won in it. Then if I don't wear it the next night, then I get somebody going, how come you're not wearing the tie? I'm like, okay, it's fine.
My mom and girlfriend are sitting at home applauding right now, who have personally seen the battle that goes on in my closet and the amount of clothes that continue to accumulate. So they're probably beyond happy to hear that advice getting thrown my way. Not sure that's going to help cut down suit numbers, but maybe packing for sure. I'm going to need a lot of help, Mike. I'll tell you that. I'm a packing nightmare.
I'm not telling you don't own 6 suits. I'm just telling you don't have to bring 6 of them on the road. So, and then just leave it stand there, and it's fine. So, and I got this advice from Hall of Famers going, did you bring this many suits? What are you doing? You don't get down to the weight room? So it's all set. There you go. That's some good advice, kids, right there. So plus, if you've got carry-on bags, it saves your shoulders. It's easy.
Yeah. That's funny. You mentioned fans sometimes or people being superstitious about what you wear and the whole announcer's jinx and everything. Do you have any superstitions as a broadcaster, or are you able to kind of manage that well?
No, I'm not superstitious. I'm just a little stitious. So there are a few things, but it's not like, oh, the team's doing well because of my input. It's things for a broadcast for me. I don't eat before a TV game. The latest I'll eat is 1 o'clock because I have this unnatural fear of having something in my teeth that I will never be able to get out. And then I'm stuck with that on TV. Or there are enough viral moments as broadcasters that we stumble into without, wanting to be a part of it. I am really stressed out about eating something and it doesn't agree with me and having that moment on the air. And I'm like, nope, don't need that. So that's one of the little superstitions or quirks that I have. But no, other than that, I fill out I have to handwrite my notes. It's not a fear of technology. I like technology. I use it a lot, but I'm always I'm going to put everything on a computer and I'm going to go to print it out, and we lose power for the time I need to print it, or the file crashes or gets lost. So I've learned to do things by hand, but that's also something that helps me. And it's funny because I heard Joe Buck talk about this the other day, and it kind of shocked me that I'm thinking, okay, you're at this level when you're talking about national, that he writes it out by hand. And, it's for me just a learning thing. I will use the same pen, though, over and over and over. Once I get a good pen, Owen, I do not switch it up. I'm not switching to, oh, well, I need this one. I keep keep that one till it's out of ink. And it's usually a very sad goodbye. I just throw it over my shoulder. But I get very protective of, a good writing pen. I don't lend it out to people. So that, I guess, is a little superstitious. It's a weird one, I know.
Well, it's as awesome as broadcasters. I know we're all creatures of habit, so that's good. But I did also want to ask too about simulcasting, because it's becoming more and more common in the NHL. Radio and television broadcast same time. I wanted to ask how do you kind of approach that? Is it more of a radio call because you have to be descriptive, or do you kind of lend itself to being like TV, or just how do you walk that line?
The funny thing is the people in TV who are the TV higher ups will tell you they don't want a radio call because the people watching can see it. So I don't need to say that, it's a shot from the top of the right circle. It's too many words in their opinion, but I try to be mindful that there are people who are listening on radio. So for me, it's always it's the way that we're going. When we're like, look at this replay, or as these numbers will show you, I can't say every number that's out there, especially when we're putting up certain graphics. So I'm mindful of that, but I try to, when I get the opportunity, be a little directional on the simulcast, like, darts to his left or circles behind the net. So there is that sense of proportion to the game. And again, I've there's more than one way to call it. And there are some people, when it comes to the call of the game, like where the bosses are like, that's fine, you can be directional to it. And then there are some people who are like, no, you don't say it at all. We want them to watch TV. We don't care about that. But it's something, again, where I'm mindful, but my call is really more of, if it's a simulcast, it's a TV call more than a radio call. And it's just one of those things where that's what it does boil down to. But, I can mix in here and there, drops the puck, here we go. One of the things that I try to do, the funny thing is when it's a national game, is I try to help some fans who want to sync up our call and get the call of, you do something, it seems insignificant, but like drops the puck. So you can, he dropped the puck. All right, now I'm, catching up to it. Here we go, and can play there. But there's so many really good play-by-play guys out there right now. And, simulcast is becoming more and more and more. You're going around the league, a couple of years ago it was 3, and I think now we're up to 7. So it's not in inevitability, but we're going to, I think, see more and more head that way. So, and I think that you get certain people now who understand that. So if the play-by-play can throw in a little bit more direction, not where it overtakes everything, because really for me, for TV, it's allowing Trip Tracy to really get the analysis in. For what you just saw. Like that's really the bigger thing on the TV side of things. And, with that explanation, hopefully it translates well over the radio that we're serving the people there. But no, my call doesn't, it's not like I'm freaking out going, I have to say that moving left to right. Well, if you're watching it on TV, they're moving left to right. I can't say that. If we're just doing a radio call, I get to be really descriptive. But no, it's something where I try to strike a decent enough balance where if you're listening on the radio, you at least know where the puck is from my call.
Mike, you said you booked off the whole afternoon. As much as I want to hold you to the next 3 hours, we'll close it off here and go back to the Metro as a whole. And looking at this upcoming year and considering what happened last year, the Devils, all kinds of disappointment, and a lot of that being injury prone. The Rangers as well, a disaster of a season with the expectations coming off the President's Trophy. You've got the outstanding season the Capitals put out, the Blue Jackets gaining traction. All of that considered, adding on what we talked about with the Canes adding, really coming into this season as a threatening presence in the Metro. How do you see this division shaking down? Do you see New Jersey and New York bouncing back? Are the Capitals going to be able to maintain that? Are the Canes the President's Trophy winners when we come to next April?
Well, I think the one thing that a lot of teams might have learned, and I don't believe in this President's Trophy curse or jinx, I mean, it's a thing because we talk about it, but what Florida did this past season, which is we just got to get in, and home ice doesn't matter. If you're good enough, you're going to win no matter where you play. I don't think that there is this urge the way that it used to be to we got to have 62 wins and win the President's Trophy and make sure that we have home ice. I think it's more, are we playing our best when April gets here and peaking for the playoffs? Like, that's what I think the secret is now for a lot of teams. That said, I think that the Metro Division is the Canes to lose this year. It's their division. I look at New Jersey. I think they're the biggest threat if they're healthy. Because if they're healthy, that's one hell of a roster that Tom Fitzgerald has put up there. But the injuries are a big concern in New Jersey. They've got just a bunch of players who can't stay healthy. But if they do, there's a ton of firepower. I think defensively they've gotten better, and they can be a tough team to play against. Washington, I think that the Caps, they got that Ovi bump last year, going for the record and passing Wayne Gretzky for the most goals in NHL history. And they got great goaltending. I mean, they got it every single night when it needed to be there. I look at the Caps. They also, in a strange way, I would never say that not putting TJ Oshie and Nick Backstrom in your lineup was a good thing. Like, I never think I would. If I did that, you should either fire me or check me into and make sure I have my faculty, because that's an insane thing to say. But it was actually, in the long run, the best thing that happened for Washington, because they had young players who, okay, Alexei Protas, you have to step up now. Connor McMichael, you have to step up now. And they did. And they gave young guys more room, and they got faster if you watch them. But now everybody knows the book on them, where I don't think they really snuck up on teams, but it was more of a, they're going to come back down to earth. Yeah, it's a hot start, but that'll find its level. And they just stayed at that level all year. I think that they'll take a step back, but I think that they're almost like where the Hurricanes were last year, when people are saying, well, I don't know how good they'll be after this happened. They're a playoff team. And the question is, are they going to run away with the way they did the first 3 or 4 months? Pittsburgh, who knows what's going on? Philly's going to be tougher to play against, but I don't know if they're better. But they're going to have a pretty damn good coach behind the bench in Rick Tocchet. And I think that Keith Jones and Danny Briere are putting that team in the right direction. But they're still a little ways away from there. Columbus, everything they dealt with last year to even be as close to the playoffs as they were, that to me was the best story in the regular season of the NHL, team-wise, with what they did in that horrible tragedy with the Godot brothers, losing their lives before the start of the season, and for the job Don Waddell did, and behind the bench Dean Evison to keep them on track. The question is now, do their young guys take a step up? The Islanders, they're the weird one for me, because it's the end of the Lou Lamoriello era, but are they going to be, now are the shackles off and they can play more offensively? Will we see more of that? Or, they know what they are and they're going to be hard to play against the Rangers. Maybe they get the Mike Sullivan bump for the juice, but I'm not 100% sure, because you look at that roster, and I like Chris Drury a lot, but there was only so much he could do. And I don't think that they added anything significant where I'm like, well, that makes them way better than what they were last year. I like Gavrikov a ton, but Keandre Miller is the guy who I think you could build around, and that's the question. So no, I think the Metro is the Canes to lose, and basically it just comes down to the health. And I mean, that's everybody. We can say that for everybody. Does the health stay that way? But if all things are even, the way that the Canes are built, adding Nick Ehlers into the mix, who is another guy who's going to be going over to Italy and playing for Denmark along with Freddie Anderson. But he's going to add, I look at the ads that the Canes have, they were all positives. They all fill a role or a need. Doesn't mean that this is a perfect team in their construct right now, but I think in the Metro, they're the team. They're going to be the hunted, and it's deservedly so.
Well, in 2006, the Olympic year boasted pretty well for Carolina hockey. We're hoping that's the same fate coming up, and looking forward to, in my opinion as well, watching the Carolina Hurricanes run the Metro. Mike, thank you so much for your time here. Looking forward to meeting you later this week as Canes camp gets underway, and cannot wait for the season to get going.
No, appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me. Seriously, anytime in the season, if somebody backs out or, gets promoted to the fourth or the third line and you need me to take a shift, I'm here for you. Casey, welcome to the family. I can't tell you how excited people are in Raleigh, and it's not blowing smoke that there's a hockey team in Greensboro where there's an affiliation with the Hurricanes, and we know that there's going to be headlines with the ownership group, and that's a great thing for it. But more importantly, really good hockey market, and great to have you in. So anytime you got the time to come into Raleigh, and I'll see if I can make a few trips down 40 to jump into Greensboro and say hello. Looking forward to it. Should be great. Thanks for having me, boys. I appreciate it.